So like, how do I explain this? Every class has an active racial, right? Will of Forsaken, active, 2-minute cooldown, okay? And then every class also has passives, right? Passives like reduces shadow damage taken by 1%. Touch of the Grave, your attacks and damaging spells have a chance to train the target, right? Passives. So every class has passives and actives. Orc's active is pretty good. It gives you basically like an unused trinket. And it makes your, it's like the Bloodlust one. It makes your damaging spells hit harder on a 2-minute cooldown. Like, it's pretty good. Orc's passive is reduces stuns by 20%. Why? What? How? The passive for Orc, if you wanted to put it in line with the other passives of other classes, should reduce stuns by 1%. Maybe 2. Maybe 5. 20 is, it's just not even, it doesn't make any sense. 20 is just, it's not even a real number. That's why Orc is so OP. Like, I literally don't fucking understand how that can be in the game. That's the only passive they have here. Let's log onto an Orc real quick. Orcs have the passive, damage dealt by pets increased by 1, which is pretty good. They have the active, 2-minute cooldown increases attack power, which is like similar to an unused trinket, which is like really good already, by the way. Like, that's good, by the way. That's really, like, that's a good ability. So yeah, I think hardiness, if you wanted to balance it, should duration of stun effects reduced, I think by 1 to 5%. Why is it 20? What? 20? It must have been a typo. It should have been 2. I just doesn't make any sense. For a passive? Huh? You know, huh? Yeah, am I crazy here? So basically, every class has 2 passives and an active, right? Okay, so Night Elf has an active 2-minute cooldown Shadow Meld, which can help you survive. It's super good, right? Really good. It can remove you from combat, so you can get a re-stealth. It detargets like a Chaos Bolt or a G-Pie. It immunes damage if it's already in the air. Like, insane, right? The active ability from a Night Elf is good. Now the passives. Increase your haste by 1%. Increase your crit by 1%. Increases your chance to dodge melee and range by 2%. And your movement speed by 2%. All I'm saying is, the passive for Orc should be in line with the passives of every other class. They aren't that good. They're very, very, very minor things that do help you. So Orc hardiness should reduce stuns by 2%. Like, if you want to make the argument, you could maybe push up to 5. I'm just saying, it shouldn't be a very good ability. It should just be a passive that barely helps you, that still does help you, but barely. Let's look at another class, right? So Gnome, once again, Escape Artist, 1-minute cooldown gets you out of things. That's the active Gnome ability. That's pretty good. If anything, I would say Gnome's active's a little bit weaker than some other classes, but that's pretty good. You know, pretty solid. It's really solid in earlier versions of the game, like TBC and stuff, where like there's less crazy shit going on, and getting out of a root is pretty good. But it's also only a 1-minute cooldown instead of 2, so it's pretty all right. Passives: maximum mana increased by 5. Now this is one of the stronger passives. That's pretty good, man. That's pretty good, but it's only 5. You know, reduces arcane damage taken by 1% is the other passive. It looks like gnomes get 3. Haste 1%. Maximum mana 5%, reduces arcane damage 1%. Those are the 3 passives. Let's log back into an Orc. Reduces stuns by 20%. Like, it has gotta be a typo. There's just no fucking way anyone could put that in the game. 20! It's a passive! So the active, you get an unused trinket. That's really good. Another passive is you get damage dealt by pets, increased by 1%, right? Which is pretty not so good, pretty average. It's like just like whatever. Duration of stuns reduced by 20? I really honestly believe it should be reduced by 2%. And if you wanna maybe make it better, you could maybe make an argument for 5. I don't think anything past 5 is okay for a passive. No fucking shot. I can't believe it's at 20. That doesn't make any sense. So human racial, it's one of the best in the game. You remove all stun effects, 3-minute cooldown. This is one of the best in the game. It's an active, it's a 3-minute, but it removes stuns. So that's like insane, right? You gain 2% more of all secondary stats, haste, crit, mastery, and verse from all sources. So that's really good. That is really good, and it's only 2%. Once again, 20% stun reduction though. It's so, like, that should have not made it past alpha, man. I don't fucking get it. I don't know how that's been in the game for so long. I really don't. That has got to be the most broken passive in the game. Not even, it's by such a large margin too. It's not even like calculatable how insane that is. If you compare it to other passives, it's just not even close. All right, let's look at this. So trolls get a 3-minute cooldown, 10% haste increase, which is like okay. I would say overall this is just like an okay on use. It's nothing crazy. It's not terrible, but it's like really the only class that uses trolls in PvP could be like a shadow priest. I think like you usually don't really want to play troll too much. Maybe a moonkin. That's okay. So let's look at the passives. Reduces the duration of movement impairing effects by 20%. So movement impairing effects are like a slow. That's actually pretty decent. That's pretty decent. I mean, it's nothing compared to a stun, right? Like it's a slow, like a frostbolt or a hamstring or like a concussive shot or something. Health regen rate increased by 10%. 10% of total health regen may continue during combat. So you get like a very, very, very slight amount of health regen, and you get 20% reduced on movement impairing effects. Dude, 2% stun reduction on 5 seconds is nothing. Yes. That's my point. Just like every other passive racial is pretty much nothing. You're proving my point. Every passive racial should pretty much do close to nothing. It's a passive racial. It should be doing almost nothing. Once again, let's log into Blood Elf. Reduces arcane damage taken by 1%. This is almost nothing, as it should be. That's my point. Increases critical strike chance by 1%. Reduces arcane damage by 1%. And removes 1 beneficial effect. So Blood Elves are actually a little bit weaker because Arcane Torrent, this used to be an AoE silence and they made it to an AoE dispel. It's not that good anymore, but still some people play it. Demon Hunters, I guess, kind of still do. Yeah, so that's it. You get 1%. Like, okay, just thought experiment real quick. What would you rather have? 1% reduced arcane damage taken, or 20% stun reduction? Like, what the fuck? Like, dude, it's not even, it's like, it's just not even like, yeah, like, are you guys on the same, are we all on the same page here? As a passive for a class, would you rather have 1% reduced arcane damage taken or 20% stun reduction? Fuck. If it was all right, here, let me ask you this. This should prove my point right here. This should prove my point. Would you rather have 1% arcane damage taken reduction, or would you rather have 1% stun reduction? Type in the chat now. This should prove my point. The stun reduction, abso-fucking-lutely. It's not even close. 1% stun reduction is better than 1% arcane reduction. So now you guys are telling me 1% stun reduction is better than 1% arcane reduction, and orcs have 20% stun reduction. What in the fuck? What in the fuck? What? You know? So that's how OP stun is. That's how OP orc is. That's how OP orc is. Can you imagine if this reduces arcane damage taken by 20%? Can you fucking imagine? Like that is fucking crazy if you think about it. If orc had a 1% stun reduction, it would still be better. But they don't. They have 20% reduction. That's fucking crazy, man. So that's really crazy. So anyway, orc should for sure be nerfed. But I would go so far as to say it shouldn't be nerfed from 20% to 10. That would still be too OP, in my opinion. That would be way too OP still. 10, in my opinion. I would say it should be nerfed from 20 down to 2%. And I would still say that's one of the stronger passive racials. Shadow resistance. Reduces shadow damage taken by 1%. That's what Undead gets. And then Touch of the Grave, which accounts for like 0% of your damage in any given game ever. 20% of 5 seconds is only 1 second reduction. No, it's 20% reduction. Out of a 5 second stun, 20% of it is gone. It should be reduced damage while stunned by 1%. I agree. I think the best way to change it would be reduces damage taken while stunned by 1%. That would be the perfect way to fix it. It would make it in line with reduces shadow damage taken by 1%, reduces arcane damage taken by 1%, Orc racial. I think that I 100% agree. The best way would be reduces damage while stunned by 1%. And guess what? That would be the best out of all of them. Because it wouldn't reduce just arcane, it wouldn't reduce just shadow, it wouldn't reduce just nature, it wouldn't reduce just fire. It would reduce all damage taken while stunned. So it would still be the best passive racial, but it would put it in line with the others. That is the best. I 100% applaud that. That's what it should be. Then you'd have to nerf human because there isn't a single race stronger than human at that point. I mean, I kind of agree. So like my overall solution is either remove all racials from the game, period, or remove all active racials from the game, period. Or if you want to keep them, every class could just choose one. So everyone could just choose one. But if you want to keep it the way it is, then yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it is the strongest. I really like racials in the game. Like, I feel like gnome racial or night elf racial don't bother me that much. Or undead doesn't really bother me that much. Or orc on use doesn't bother me that much. Troll on use doesn't bother me that much. Those things are kind of fun flavor things for the game. Like, okay, you're gonna get some casting speed or some extra attack power, or like you get out of a root. Like those things don't bother me. But when it comes to getting out of a stun, and the entire game shifts because of it from a racial, I agree. I agree. It's like human's way too strong. Yeah, too. The two strongest class races in the game are human and orc, right? But I think orc is just what makes it so funny is that it's a passive. It's not even the on use that's OP. It's the passive. The passive is way. It's like 20 times stronger than it needs to be. You know what I mean?